I was traveling in Japan and noticed these large chains attached to the underside of an overpass. They are fastened to metal brackets and components under the bridge, and I have never seen anything like them before. Does anyone know what it is? What you saw is a seismic bridge restraint system, basically heavy-duty retaining chains that keep a bridge span from sliding off its supports during an earthquake. Many bridges are designed so the deck sits on bearings or pads that can move a little, which helps the structure flex instead of cracking. In a strong quake, that movement can become dangerous, so the chains act like a safety tether. They limit travel, absorb part of the shock load, and prevent a full unseating failure. Systems like this became much more common in Japan after major modern earthquakes, including the 1995 Kobe earthquake. I spotted this white plastic thing rolling down the road, and it was about 2 feet long. It looked a little like an air fryer on wheels, with 2 shiny metal orbs and flashing red lights on top. I did not get close enough to pass it, and it made me wonder if it was some kind of delivery robot. What you saw is a velomobile, a human-powered bicycle car built around a recumbent trike and covered by an aerodynamic shell. The rider pedals inside, and the fairing reduces wind drag and helps protect against rain. Most modern velomobiles use 3 wheels, usually 2 in front, so they stay upright when stopped and handle crosswinds better than a 2-wheel faired bike. The flashing lights and rear beacon make it easier to see in traffic, and the shiny balls are side mirrors. Riders use them for commuting and longer rides, and a few streamlined cousins are built for speed records. I found a set of these vintage Christmas decorations in a box of random old ornaments. Each one is about 3 inches tall and made of plastic. The orange piece on the bottom comes off, and the inside is hollow. I have around 12 of them, and I cannot figure out what they were used for. What you found is a set of plastic Christmas light covers that slip over small bulbs on a string of holiday lights. The orange base acts as a clip that snaps onto the bulb or socket, and the frosted top creates a little lantern shape that softens the glare and changes the look of the light. People use these to dress up light strings on a tree, in a window, or along a mantle, then stored the covers with the rest of the decorations for the next season. I found this wooden device in a craft closet, and it weighs under 3 pounds. The base is labeled Adaptability, and it has 4 wing screws that tighten or loosen to control the movement of the wooden arms. Does anyone know what it is used for? What you found is an adaptability lap-held needlework stand, made for cross-stitch, embroidery, and similar hand sewing. The flat base is meant to be held in place by your thigh while you sit, so the stand stays steady without clamps or a table. The adjustable wooden arms hold a scroll frame or hoop at a comfortable height, and the wing screws let you set the angle, tension, and position. Stands like this became popular in the late 20th century as ergonomic craft tools, especially for stitchers who wanted both hands free. I found this small, silver-toned object while cleaning out someone's junk room, and it is about 3 inches long and about 1 inch wide. It is shaped a bit like a lighter. It opens on a hinge and snaps shut, and inside there are 2 soft blue fabric cushions. The outside is thin metal, the inside is black plastic, and the only marking is a Made in China sticker. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a small CD and DVD cleaning tool. The padded fabric inside is meant to press gently on both sides of the disc while you rotate it, lifting fingerprints and dust. These became common promo giveaways in the late 1990s and early 2000s, when music and software were still sold on discs. If someone uses one, the safer approach is to clean from the center outward, since scratches that run across the tracks tend to cause fewer red errors than circular scratches. I got this as a Christmas gift and my whole family is stumped. It looks 3D printed with a plastic handle about 4 inches long and a cord that can slide and adjust to about 3 feet. The cord ends in 2 small plastic pieces. Does anyone know what it is used for? What you got is a ski boot tote handle, made to carry a pair of ski boots with one hand. The 2 ends slide into the openings at the top of each boot, and the cord adjusts so both boots hang evenly. The handle gives you a comfortable grip and helps keep muddy soles away from your clothes. Simple carriers like this showed up as skiing became more recreational in the late 20th century, when gear makers started adding small accessories to make boots and helmets easier to carry. I found this brass object that is about 6 inches long while going through my grandpa's belongings after he passed away. I first thought it might be a pipe, yet there is no open airway running through it. What you found is a yatate, a traditional Japanese portable writing set about 6 inches long. It holds a small calligraphy brush inside the handle, and the hinged dragon head covers an ink chamber. Instead of grinding ink on a stone, the chamber was packed with cotton soaked in ink. The writer touched the brush to the cotton, then could write right away without carrying a bottle that might leak. Yatate appeared by the late 12th century and became especially popular in the Edo era from the 17th through 19th centuries. Travelers, merchants, and samurai used them for notes and letters. The dragon decoration signals strength and protection, and it points to a higher quality personal item. I found this unusual silver and leather item years ago among some discarded objects near community bins, and I still cannot figure out what it was made for. The larger metal ring has a faint 925 stamp and the word JUHIS. Does anyone know what it is used for? What you found is a Sami needle case, a traditional way to carry sewing needles so they stay protected and easy to reach. People wore these on a belt so quick repairs could happen anywhere, whether mending clothing, boots, or outdoor gear. Your piece looks like a modern silver version inspired by older antler or bone cases. The 925 stamp points to sterling silver, and the JUHLS mark suggests it came from Jules' Silver Gallery in Kautokeino, Norway, a workshop founded in 1959 that became known for designs rooted in Sami culture. I found this stiff metal spring ring in the grass across from a local convenience store, and I thought it was a bracelet at first. When I tried it on, it grabbed and pulled my arm hair, and there is a small metal disc attached to the band that is not magnetic, though magnets stick to it. It is shown next to a standard credit card for size. What you found is a spring sleeve garter, also called a shirt sleeve holder. It slides over the hand and grips the upper arm to keep long sleeves from sliding down while you work. The coiled metal gives it a one-size fit, and that spring tension explains why it can grab arm hair. These were common in the late 19th and early 20th centuries among office clerks, shopkeepers, and anyone doing hands-on work in a dress shirt. The small round disc is a decorative plate or a spot where a maker's badge was attached. I found this small wooden frame with a screw clamp at a flea market near my house, and my girlfriend thought it might be a can crusher. The plunger only moves downward by turning the screw, so that does not seem right, and the seller did not know what it was either. The wooden cylinder around the base of the clamp slides off easily, and I was able to remove it with very little effort. What you found is a small screw press modeled after a traditional cider or fruit press. The slatted wooden cylinder is the basket where chopped fruit, herbs, or mash would sit, and turning the handle drives the screw downward to squeeze liquid out through the gaps. On a full-size press, that juice would run into a tray and be collected as cider, wine must, or fruit syrup. Small versions like this show up as decorative pieces, and some are made sturdy enough to use for tiny batches, including herbal infusions and oils. Cider presses have been common farm tools since the colonial era in North America. I found this small item under my car seat, and it was probably there when I bought the car. It is about 1 inch across, made of some kind of polyurethane, and it has a metal piece embedded inside. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a cold-mounted sample puck used in materials testing and metallography. A small specimen is cast in clear resin so it can be clamped, cut, and polished without breaking. The metal strip inside is the specimen, and the shallow rings show where it was held while the resin cured. After curing, the face is ground smooth and viewed under a microscope for cracks, coatings, or heat treatment clues. It probably came from someone who worked in a lab. I found this green plastic item in my kitchen, and it was shoved way in the back of a cupboard. It measures about 8 inches by 8 inches and about 3 inches tall. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a clip-on refrigerator organizer bin. The wide plastic rails hook over a fridge shelf, and the open bottom slots let air circulate so produce like berries or grapes can drain and stay fresher. It works like an extra drawer that uses the empty space under a shelf for small items that tend to get lost in the back. These became popular as modern refrigerators added more modular storage accessories in the late 20th century. I was given this unusual pipe by my aunt, and she thought it might be some kind of Native American artifact. The white parts look like porcelain. The stem is made of wood. and there are two soft little brushes hanging from a string. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a traditional German porcelain tobacco pipe, sometimes called a Tyrolean pipe or a Black Forest pipe. These decorative pipes were popular in the 19th and early 20th centuries, especially in Bavaria and the Alpine regions of Austria and Switzerland. The painted porcelain bowl usually shows hunting or country scenes, and the metal cap helps keep ash from blowing out. The long wooden stem allows the smoke to cool, and the removable Y-shaped insert works as a small cooling chamber and filter. The connections are sealed with cork, much like a woodwind instrument. The little hair tassels are decorative. Many were kept and handed down as heirlooms. I found this small, solid metal object at my grandparents' house. The stem has detailed figures that look like a serpent, a mule, and an oil lamp, and it feels surprisingly heavy for its size. What you found is a Hindu ritual spoon called an udurani, used in ceremonies to pour small offerings such as water or ghee into a sacred fire. The heavy metal and detailed figures connect to Lord Shiva. The serpent represents Vasuki, the cobra associated with Shiva and his protective power. The bull is Nandi, Shiva's devoted companion and mount, a symbol of strength and faithfulness. Pieces like this are made for temple worship and home worship, and they can be found across India and neighboring regions. I found this heavy metal device with some old farm equipment, and it measures about 12 inches tall and 6 inches across. It has a Gould pump sticker on it, and the top looks like it has a chuck similar to a drill. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a manual hose crimper, used to crimp fittings onto hydraulic or fuel hose. The hose end sits in the jaws at the base, and the screw mechanism drives the die downward to squeeze the metal ferrule tight around the hose. That crimp is what locks the fitting to the hose and creates a sealed connection, so it will not leak or blow off when the line is under pressure. Shops and farms relied on tools like this as hydraulic systems became more common after World War II, when tractors and loaders began using high-pressure hoses for steering, lifts, and implements. I received this small decorative item from a Japanese grandmother who used to run an old camera shop, and I have no idea what it was meant for. It has a bright red and gold floral pattern, and it looks like it was made to fit or attach to something. Does anyone know what it is used for? What you received is a hashioki, a Japanese chopstick rest. It keeps chopsticks raised so the tips stay clean, and do not touch the table between bites, which fits Japanese table manners. This one is covered in chiogami, a decorative paper style that dates back to the Edo period. The red and gold floral pattern is meant to convey beauty, good fortune, and a long life. Small pieces like this are also given as a simple wish of luck. I found this ceramic ornament that looks like a bell, yet it only makes a small clunk sound instead of ringing. It seems to be made of pottery or porcelain, and the sticks through the top handle look like small reeds tied together with a papery ribbon. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a Chinese good fortune wishing pot, sometimes called a dream jar. It is meant to hold written wishes, hopes, or blessings, placed inside like a private message for the year ahead. During Lunar New Year celebrations, people write what they want for the coming year and set it in the jar as a symbolic way of planting good luck and happiness. The clunk you hear comes from an inner piece shifting, not from a bell ringing. I found this heavy metal rectangular object with a pair of keys attached. It has two keyholes on one side and circular sections inside that look like moving parts. The bar inside swivels when the key is turned, but I cannot tell what it was used for. What you found is a lockable coin dispenser, a piece of change-making hardware used around coin-operated machines. Inside, the round pockets hold stacks of coins, and turning the key moves a gate that releases a single coin or a set amount into the tray. The keys let an operator load coins and keep the supply secure. These dispensers became common from the 1950s through the 1980s, when vending machines, arcades, laundromats, and parking equipment depended on quarters, dimes, and nickels. Some were worn on a belt, and others were mounted in kiosks. I found this metal scoop with a plastic handle and a small matching plastic stand. The scoop sits in the stand, and there is a raised bump in the middle that pushes against the handle when it is resting there. What is that middle piece supposed to do? What you found is a kitchen serving scoop, and the small plastic piece is a rest that keeps the scoop from touching the counter. The raised middle section works like a gentle grip, pressing against the handle so the scoop stays balanced and does not slide off. It also creates a small gap under the scoop so drips fall back into the bowl instead of spreading on the table. Simple tool rests like this became popular as non-stick cookware and countertop gadgets took off in the late 20th century. I came across these small metal talons that are about 2 inches long, and they appear to be made of brass. Each one has 4 claw tips plus a 5th claw in the position of a cat's dew claw, and each piece weighs about 1 ounce. What you found is one of the claw ends from charcoal tongs, the kind used to grab and move hot coals in a fireplace, wood stove, or grill. The curved claws are shaped to catch uneven pieces of charcoal and hold them steady while the fire is being rearranged. The hollow threaded base shows it originally screwed onto a handle or the tong arm, and the rest of the tool is missing. Coal and charcoal tools like this were common household equipment in the 19th and early 20th centuries, before central heating became widespread. Found this hammered copper setup, a bulbous pot with a curved swan neck tube leading to a separate bucket that has a copper coil inside. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is an alembic still. The broad copper pot is the boiler, the curved swan neck carries vapor, and the separate bucket with the coiled tube is the water-cooled condenser. Liquid in the boiler is heated, the vapor rises through the neck, cools in the coil, and runs out the spout as a purified distillate. Alembics go back to the medieval Islamic world, where scholars such as Jabir ibn Hayyan refined distillation for pharmacy and perfumery. The design spread across the Mediterranean and into Europe, becoming a workhorse for apothecaries and later for brandy, whiskey, and rum making. Copper is used because it spreads heat evenly and helps bind sulfur compounds, which gives a cleaner product. Today, the same form appears in craft distilleries and in households that make hydrosols and essential oils, rosewater in North Africa, lavender in Provence, and small batch spirits around the world. Found this bamboo basket with a long yoke handle. A thin wire runs from the bottom of the basket up to a small crosspin at the top. I wondered if it might be some kind of instrument. What is it? What you found is an ektra, a single-string Bengali lute. Its thin string runs from the basket-shaped resonator to a small tuning peg at the top. The player plucks the string and gently squeezes and releases the long bamboo neck to bend the pitch as it rings. The resonator is traditionally a gourd or a woven basket covered with skin, with the bamboo neck passing through it. Across parts of India and Nepal, wandering singers and holy men use the ektara as a steady drone to support songs, prayers, and epic recitations. Found in an old barn on a property we bought. It's a metal and glass piece with the glass section sealed to the metal, and it feels heavy for its size. Any idea what this is? What you found is a vacuum variable capacitor used in high-power radio equipment. The finned metal cylinder acts as a heat sink and one electrical terminal, and the glass rings seal a vacuum around the moving plates inside. Turning the small shaft on top changes how much the plates overlap, which changes the capacitance and lets a technician tune the circuit. These parts were widely used from the mid-1900s through the late 20th century wherever strong radio signals were needed. Broadcast transmitters at radio stations, military and commercial transmitters, amateur radio linear amplifiers, antenna tuners at towers, and industrial RF heaters and sealers in factories. American and European companies made them, including firms like Jennings and Comet. Found while cleaning a vacant garage. It's about 36 inches tall, 42 inches long, 24 inches wide, and roughly 80 pounds. The metal rollers rotate on a central shaft and each one can spin on its own. What is this machine used for? What you found is a mid-20th century electric roller slenderizing machine, the kind sold in the United States in the 1950s under names like the Niblack System Home Pony. It was marketed for home beauty corners and salons to trim the waist, thighs, and hips. The spiral metal rollers sit on a powered shaft, and each roller spins freely to knead the body as you rest or lean on the unit. In use, the motor is switched on, the speed is set, and the user slowly rolls the stomach, thighs, calves, or lower back across the rollers for a few minutes. Advertisements promised improved circulation, relaxation, and loss of inches, which made these heavy, steel-framed machines a familiar sight in spas during that era. Found this hand-cranked wooden box with a spiked drum inside. The lid lifts, the crank turns the drum, and a small side chute looks like an outlet. What you found is a hand-cranked rotary cheese grater, sometimes called a cheese rub. A piece of hard cheese sits under the lid against the spiked drum. Turning the crank rotates the drum, and the grated cheese falls out through the side chute. This wooden style was made for kitchen use, and a well-known version was created by Italian craftsman Davide Piazza in 1989 in Pearwood as part of a coordinated utensil set. Spotted these old cast iron posts on street corners around Washington, D.C. Each has a small box or niche near the top and a tall finial, and many are rusted and empty. What were they originally used for, and why are so many still standing today? What you saw is the remains of Washington's emergency call box system from the 19th and early 20th centuries. Before telephones were common, these curbside boxes let people report fires, crimes, or medical emergencies quickly and reliably. There were two main kinds: fire call boxes with a pull lever that sent a coded telegraph signal to the nearest fire station, and police call boxes, which officers used to check in, report incidents, or request assistance while on patrol. With the arrival of two-way radios and the 911 system in the mid-20th century, the boxes were retired. The mechanisms were removed, but the cast iron posts were left in place, and many were preserved as part of the city's heritage, which is why they still stand on street corners today. Found these two wooden pieces together. One is a cylindrical cup with a hole in the center, and the other is a round disc with a matching hole and a carved design on one side. What are they used for? What you found is a wooden butter mold and press. The deep cup is the mold itself, and the round disc with the carved leaf is the follower that stamps the pattern. A straight handle or screw once passed through the center holes to push the follower down, squeezing out leftover buttermilk and compacting the butter. When the butter set, the handle was used to push the stamped pat out of the mold. These molds were common in farm kitchens in the 19th and early 20th centuries in America and Europe, and the carved designs helped identify the maker at market. As factory creameries and paper-wrapped sticks took over, home butter molds faded from daily use, but many survived as kitchen antiques. Found in a 1950s silverware set, it's shorter than a teaspoon and has a flat, curved blade with a pointed but dull tip. The handle appears to be silver, and the blade looks like stainless steel, about 3 inches long. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is an orange peeler, a table utensil made to score and lift the peel without cutting into the fruit or getting juice on your hands. The small hook at the tip draws shallow lines through the rind, and the flat, curved blade slides under the scored sections to lift them away and scrape off any remaining pith. Pieces like this were popular from the late 19th into the early 20th century and continue to appear in mid-century silverware sets. Makers such as Rogers and Brother and other American silver firms produce them with silver or silver-plated handles and stainless working ends, which matches the construction of yours. I dug up this heavy iron piece in Sydney, Nova Scotia back in the 1970s. Does anyone know what it is and what it was used for? What you found is the blade from a spontoon, a socketed polearm used in the 17th and 18th centuries. The spear-like head with pierced decorative wings would have been fitted to a wooden shaft by the hollow socket, and the side slot was for a securing pin that locked the head to the pole. Spontoons served two roles. On the field, they led officers' signal formations and provided a thrusting weapon at close range, and away from combat, they signified rank and authority. By the 19th century, as firearms dominated, spontoons disappeared from service and were replaced by other badges of office, such as sabers. Finding one in Sydney, Nova Scotia, fits the area's colonial history, where British units stationed in North America carried polearms of this type. Found in a cabin with the board games, and it's a wooden stand with two hanging rings and a center hook, plus a separate base with a peg and circular marks. What is this? What you found is a bimini ring toss set. Two players swing the hanging ring and try to catch it on the center hook. Each time the ring lands, the peg on the small base moves one step toward the other player. When the peg reaches and passes the other player's end, that player drinks. The seaside version became popular in the early 20th century around bars and marinas in the Caribbean, especially on Bimini in the Bahamas. A related pub game called Ringing the Bull was played in Britain in the 19th century. Found this curved frame with 4 gray loops that slide and lock along a centimeter scale using thumb screws. What is this used for? What you found is a guitar finger spreader, a practice aid for learning chord shapes and improving reach. The gray loops hold the fingertips, and their positions slide along the centimeter scale to match a chord spacing. With the loops set, the hand rests in the frame, and the fingers are gently held in that pattern, which helps build muscle memory and flexibility for wider stretches. Picked up this small wooden box at a thrift store. Inside are 11 colors with 2 matching wooden pieces for each color. There are no labels or markings anywhere. Does anyone know what it is? What you bought is a Montessori color box, known as Color Box 2. It includes 11 colors with 2 matching tablets of each in a wooden tray. Children around 3 to 6 use it to match identical colors, name them, and arrange simple color sequences. The wooden frames let small hands hold the tablets without covering the color, which keeps the eye on the hue. The material comes from Dr. Maria Montessori's early 20th century sensorial work and is still produced by classroom suppliers today. I noticed small clear dishes filled with white dome-shaped gel placed on the ledges outside every office window in our building. There are no labels or markings. What are they for? What you found are optical gel bird deterrent dishes. They're placed on ledges where birds like to perch. The gel reflects ultraviolet light in a way that appears like flames to birds, so they avoid the area. It's made from non-toxic ingredients, typically with an agar base, and set in shallow trays to keep the surface exposed. This method is viewed as a safer, low-impact alternative to spikes or nets, and is used as part of broader bird control programs alongside physical, chemical, and acoustic measures. Found this small cast iron turtle with a lift-off top and a matching base. It is solid and fairly heavy for its size. Does anyone know what it is used for? This is a cast iron string holder for a ball of twine. The ball rests in the base, the domed shell sits over it, and the free end feeds through the small hole at the top. The weight keeps the holder steady, the cover keeps the twine clean, and the ball stays put instead of rolling off the table. Pieces like this were made in the late 19th and early 20th centuries for kitchens, sewing rooms, and general store counters, and the turtle form was a popular novelty design. I picked up a tool at an estate sale. It's got a thick black plastic cap that slides over the handle, and inside there's a hinged steel rod with spiked discs. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a German acupressure massage roller for pain relief. The hinged rod holds stacks of blunt, spiked discs that stimulate the skin like a field of short needles, and the hard plastic cap functions as a storage sheath. The hinge lets the angle be set to reach the calves, back, or neck. In use, the roller is moved lightly over tight areas for a minute or two, or pressed and rolled across tender trigger points. The spikes increase local blood flow and create a deep tissue massage effect. Tools of this type were sold across Europe in the mid to late 20th century as home physiotherapy devices. A friend picked up this wooden tray at a thrift store. It has 2 ornate metal handles, a row of brass pegs in 2 sizes, and 2 tall wooden posts set into metal bases. There are no maker's marks. What is this used for? What you found is a bagel serving and display tray. The tall wooden posts were made for stacking rings of bread, while the small brass pegs kept the stacks from sliding when the tray was carried by the decorative handles. Bowls or glasses sat between the posts for cream cheese, pickles, or other sides. Trays and pegboards like this trace back to Eastern European Jewish bakeries in the late 19th century and came to the United States with immigrants. By the early 1900s, New York delis displayed fresh bagels on dowel stands behind the counter, a practical way to keep the crust dry and the stacks tidy. I found this wall-mounted device in my new house. It has a lever with a gear, a sliding rack, and a round clamp at the bottom that looks sized for a bottleneck. What is it used for? What you found is a wall-mounted wine opener, specifically a rack and pinion cork puller. The round clamp at the bottom holds the bottle's neck. A separate corkscrew, now missing, was twisted into the cork. Its ring or handle then hooked onto the forked catch in the slider. Moving the lever turned the gear and raised the rack, pulling the cork straight out in one smooth motion. Devices like this were popular in bars and restaurants from the late 19th into the mid-20th century because they were fast, sturdy, and gentle on fragile bottles. I found this clear plate with white nylon thumb screws that slide in the slots and lock when tightened. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a small adjustable bench jig for holding flat parts such as circuit boards, model pieces, or jewelry blanks. The nylon thumb screws slide in the slots to fit the work. When tightened, they lightly clamp the edges without scratching or conducting electricity. The clear plate allows access from above and below for soldering, gluing, or filing, and the corner pads keep the jig steady on the bench. Fixtures like this appeared in hobby electronics and model making in the late 20th century, and were sold by tool and electronics suppliers. I found these old metal scissors with two large loop handles and a single folding blade stamped AP. The steel looks aged and a bit rusty. What were these scissors used for? What you found is a beetle nut cutter, used to slice hard areca nuts for chewing. The two large loop handles provide leverage, and the pivoting blade shears the nut into pieces that are then wrapped in a beetle leaf with slaked lime and spices to make a beetle quid. These cutters were hand-forged from iron or bronze across South and Southeast Asia, and were common from the 19th into the early 20th century. Many were plain working tools for household use, while others were finely decorated for gifting and ceremonial sets. This belonged to my mom, who was into New Age gear in the 1980s. It has two metal plates, wired hand grips, and a big analog meter on the left. What was this device used for? This is an Intero biocommunication unit made by Ishin. It measures galvanic skin response, tiny shifts in skin conductance through the handheld metal cylinders, while samples can be placed on the two metal plates. A practitioner would calibrate the needle, have the client hold the grips, set a sample on a plate, and watch the analog meter for changes. The method goes back to Reinhold Voll's electroacupuncture ideas from the late 1950s and became popular in New Age and alternative medicine circles in the 1980s. The meter does register real conductance changes, but using them to diagnose sensitivities or choose remedies is not medically validated and has drawn FDA scrutiny. I found this round metal fixture mounted on the kitchen wall. It has a circular cover and a swing-down arm that forms a small shelf. What is this used for? What you found is a wall-mounted paper towel dispenser from the mid-20th century, roughly from the 1950s through the 1970s. The round metal cover holds a roll inside, and the swing-down arm acts as a small ledge and tear bar so a sheet can be pulled and torn cleanly. Dispensers like this kept towels close at hand, while protecting the roll from kitchen grease and splashes. I found this heavy cast iron piece while hiking in Connecticut. It's about 4 feet long, has established 1901 cast into it, and looks like it once used a crank or hitch. The metal has a greenish patina. It was lying beside an old stone structure on a mountain. What was this used for? What you found is a horse-drawn road roller from the early 1900s, built to compact dirt and gravel roadbeds. The multi-section cast iron drum provided the working weight, and the side frame shows the hitch points where a team of horses pulled it. A hand-operated gear on the frame ran a scraper bar that kept packed soil from sticking to the drum. In use, crews graded a stretch of road, dampened it, then walked the roller back and forth until the surface was dense and level. Pieces like this were sold by firms such as Whitehurst of Norfolk, which advertised patented models around 1901. Rollers of this kind supported the good roads movement in the United States, especially in rural areas where steamrollers were too costly. By the 19-teens and the 1920s, tractors and motorized rollers took over, but horse-drawn units like this one remained in service on mountain lanes, park paths, and farm roads for years. I came across a small stepped channel built into a hillside. Water runs down it in short drops from one box-like step to the next. It's clearly man-made, but I'm not sure why it's there. What you found is a fish ladder. It's a stepped channel that breaks the elevation drop into short pools, slowing the flow and giving fish places to rest as they move upstream. Each box-like step creates a small waterfall that dissipates energy, allowing salmon, trout, and other migratory species to pass a culvert, dam, or spillway and reach spawning habitat. Fish ladders were widely built in the early 20th century as conservation and water projects expanded in the United States and Europe. Designs are tailored to local species and site conditions, and today they are a standard feature of river restoration and dam mitigation, helping sustain healthy fish runs and aquatic ecosystems. I picked up this carved wooden piece at a garage sale. What is this used for? What you bought is a hand percussion rattle, also called ball castanets. The carved figure serves as the handle. The two slit wooden balls on springy wire are the sounders, and the separate stick is the beater. Sound comes from striking the balls with the stick for sharp clicks, or slipping the stick between them and shaking so they snap against it. It's a folk art instrument made as a quirky conversation piece. The hanged man shape is part of the novelty. I found this wooden piece at an antique shop. It's about 3 by 10 inches, hollow at one end with a pointed spout at the other, and it has a small hinged cap that was repaired with a screw. What is this used for? What you found is a wooden scythe whetstone holder, also called a coffin or stone box. A belt clip kept it at the mower's side so the stone was always within reach. The hollow body held the sharpening stone and a little water was poured inside to keep the stone wet. When the worker paused, the tapered tip was pressed into the ground, so the holder stood upright. In the field, the mower would stop briefly, pull out the wet stone, touch up the blade, and go back to cutting. These holders were common in the 19th and early 20th centuries. I found this vintage kitchen tool. It's a small metal cup on a wooden handle with 3 tapered spouts underneath and matching holes in the cup. What was this used for? What you found is a Portuguese funnel used to make angel hair. Beaten egg is poured into the cup and flows through the 3 tiny spouts into hot sugar syrup. The jets turn the egg into long golden strands that set in seconds. Holes inside the cup feed each spout, and the wooden handle lets the cook sweep the funnel in circles to form nests or coils. Tools like this come from Portugal's convent pastry tradition and remain popular in Portuguese and Brazilian kitchens. I picked up a solid bronze bird at an auction lot. It's about 5 inches long, 5.5 inches tall, 4 inches wide, and weighs around 3 pounds. What is this piece? What you found is a museum reproduction of a Christian hanging tabernacle called a peristerium, shaped like a dove. The hollow body held a small vessel with the reserve Eucharist, and the piece hung by a chain above the altar. This form comes from Byzantine and medieval church practice, where the dove symbolizes the Holy Spirit. As fixed altar tabernacles and wall ombres became standard, hanging doves fell out of regular use. The MMA stamp indicates the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and the added AK marks the collaborating maker. I found this at a flea market in the Netherlands. It's a wooden metal piece about 16 inches long, with a curved iron handle fixed to a rough wooden base and a small toothed disc on top. What is this item used for? What you found is a traditional Ceylon vegetable cutter with a coconut grater, used across India and Sri Lanka. The long wooden plank serves as a seat to keep the tool steady. The curved iron arm ends in a cutting edge for slicing vegetables or cleaning small fish as the food is pulled toward the blade. The small toothed wheel is the coconut grater. A halved coconut is pressed to the teeth and turned by hand to shave the flesh for curries and sweets. I saw several concrete blocks with metal stubs while hiking in a valley. They were clustered in a very wet spot along the trail. I thought they might be for stabilization, but I'm not sure. Does anyone know what these are used for? What you saw is a cluster of diamond pier foundation heads, a precast base that anchors a structure by locking steel pins driven into the soil at fixed angles. The slanted sleeves guide the pins, and the concrete head tightens its grip as the load increases. A central anchor bolt on top connects to a post bracket, creating a ready-to-build footing without digging or pouring concrete. Systems like this are used for decks, boardwalks, stairs, small bridges, and signs, particularly in wet or sensitive ground where conventional footings are difficult. I found this cast iron tool with several pivoting arms and inch scales. It has a scriber point, an adjustable head, and 2 suction cup feet, one red. There are no maker's marks besides a tiny 25 in a circle. What does this tool do? What you found is the swing arm assembly from a manual pantograph engraving machine. The hinged links form a parallelogram. By sliding the stops to the scale marks, the operator sets a ratio, so a master pattern can be traced at one size while the cutter reproduces it, scaled up or down. The pointed scribe follows the letter or template, and the opposite arm carries a spindle or marker that cuts or draws the copy. Suction feet hold the frame to the bench. Tools like this made nameplates, instrument panels, and trophies long before digital engraving. I found a brass disc about 5 inches across hanging under the seating in an old recital hall. One side is flat and covered in green felt, and the other has a 6-petal fan-like brass face. It's wired with a twisted cloth cord with 2 leads attached to the disc. What is this used for? What you found is an under-carpet foot switch from an early theater electrical system. It was designed to sit beneath an aisle runner or a seat platform so an usher or stagehand could step on that spot to bring house lights up, trigger a cue light, or ring a call buzzer. The 6-petal brass face is a spring contact that closes the circuit under pressure. The felted flat side spreads the load, quiets the action, and protects the flooring. The twisted cloth cord and 2-lead wiring match mid-20th century practice. Take a look at this carved wooden piece that looks like a club, covered with rows of tiny triangular cuts. I was told it was found beside a Japanese soldier on Okinawa in 1946. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a Samoan-style wooden war club. It is most likely a World War II souvenir rather than a battlefield weapon. During the Pacific campaigns, carvers in Samoa and the Solomon Islands made clubs for Allied servicemen, and many returned home as keepsakes. The rows of small triangular cuts echo traditional motifs and add a bit of grip, but the broad, blunt blade and the crisp edges point to display use instead of combat. In Samoa, true clubs served as status arms and were wielded at close range with 1 or 2 hands during ceremony or fighting. I saw this hanging on the wall of a barbecue restaurant. It has a turned wooden handle on one end and a curved metal disc on the other. Does anyone know what it is? What you saw is a bell hog scraper, a traditional butchering tool used right after scalding a pig to remove bristles. The flared metal disc serves as the scraping blade, and the turned wooden handle provides 2-handed leverage. After the carcass is dipped in hot water, the operator angles the outer edge of the disc and pulls it toward the body, working from the head and legs toward the tail. Warm skin and steady stretching help the bristles come free. If the hair refuses to release, it typically means the scald was not hot enough or long enough. Before mechanized dehairers, tools like this were standard on farms. I found this lightweight metal box in a library storage closet. It measures about 14.5 by 11 inches and is 1 inch thick. A soft mesh rolls across the opening when a small crank is turned, and there are mounting holes along the edges. Does anyone know what this is used for? What you found is the movable stage from an opaque projector, a classroom device that projected pages from books, drawings, or small objects onto a screen. The shallow metal frame bolts to the projector body, and the crank advances a fine pressure screen across the opening. That screen holds the page flat, limits stray light, and lets cooling air circulate while a very bright lamp floods the surface. By sliding or masking the stage, the operator framed the picture, then focused the lens. Opaque projectors were widely used in schools and art rooms from the mid-20th century, sold under names such as Opascope, until overhead projectors and document cameras replaced them. I see a flatbed truck pass my house around 8 a.m. every morning carrying 5 huge white spheres with short bases. At first I thought they were construction gear, but it seems strange to see the same load every day. Does anyone know what these are? What you saw is a set of satellite ground station radomes, similar to the pods used for SpaceX Starlink gateways. Each white golf ball is a weatherproof shell that shields a high-frequency antenna array. The rounded profile reduces wind load and sheds rain and ice while allowing radio signals to pass with minimal loss. In operation, a cluster like this links satellites overhead to fiber on the ground, moving large amounts of data with low latency. We received a hand-sized square sheet with a gold foil emblem in the center, along with a funeral letter today. The red and white parts seem to be the same paper, and the gold layer looks glued on. The sender wasn't religious as far as we know. What does this piece represent? What you received is a sheet of Chinese joss paper, also called spirit money. The gold square represents a gold ingot, and the red field marks it as an offering. In Chinese funeral customs, sheets like this are folded into ingot shapes known as yuanbao, and then burned so the value symbolically reaches the deceased in the afterlife. The practice dates back to ancient China and is rooted in ancestor veneration rather than formal religion. In many families, the burning is carried out by close relatives during the funeral or on later memorial days. Your sheet is an unused offering included as a gesture of respect. I found this yellow beige clamp in an old farm shed. It has a screw clamp on one end and two curved hooked arms on top. Does anyone know what this tool is used for? What you found is a clamp-on stand for a hand-cranked egg beater, documented in Australian patent application 28044 from 1949. The bottom screw secures the stand to a counter or shelf. The two curved arms at the top cradle the beater's frame, and the small notch supports the turning handle so the whisk stays upright. With the beater held in the stand, the user can steady a bowl beneath it, pour ingredients with a free hand, or let the whisk drip between uses without setting it on the counter. I found this small round silver case in a box of my grandmother's things. It has a hinged lid, a loop for a chain, and a spring-loaded disc inside that presses down. My family lived in the UK and Canada, and most items in the box are from the early to mid-1900s. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a spring-loaded coin holder called a sovereign case in Britain. The small loop indicates it was carried on a watch chain or chatelaine. When the hinged lid is opened, a spring beneath the inner disc lifts the stack, and a light press presents the top coin for quick payment, while the rest remains secure. Pieces of this kind were common from the late 19th into the early 20th century among commuters, cab riders, and travelers who needed ready change or transit tokens. Many were produced by British and Canadian silversmiths in nickel, silver, or sterling, and given as practical gifts. I received a Rock Auto box with brake calipers and rotors, and inside was a plastic bag with two used tools. One is a brass bristle brush head, and the other is a heavy L-shaped metal pry tool. Both have holes for mounting on a longer handle, like a pool brush. What are these, and what are they used for? What you found is a pair of patio crack weeding tools. The brass bristle head is a joint brush used to sweep dirt, moss, and small sprouts from the gaps between bricks or concrete pavers. The black L-shaped piece is a hooked scraper that slides into the joint and pries out deeper roots and larger tufts. Both pieces bolt to a standard broom handle through the holes, so the work can be done from a standing position along a walkway or driveway. Landscapers use the brush to clear loose material, follow with the hook for stubborn growth, and finish with another pass to leave the joint tidy. I found two old wooden boards, each about 22 inches by 5 inches, with rows of small metal hooks along the sides. One board has wall mount hardware and the other doesn't. The backs have deep, fluted grooves that look like they might interlock, but they don't. One board is lighter than the other. What were these used for? What you found is a wooden cigar mold, a two-piece press used in handmade cigar production. The deep, fluted cavities shape the packed tobacco bunch before the wrapper is applied. Workers load the channels, close the mold, and place it in a bench press for a short time, then open it, rotate the bunch, and finish the cigar with a wrapper before final drying and aging. The small side hooks in the wall hardware look like later additions for hanging or display rather than factory use. I have a friend who found this tool-like object in an old barn in Connecticut. It's made of wood and metal, and the curved handle slides the metal section in and out. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a late 19th century wagon jack, the R.W. Marshall design, patented on August 27, 1878. It was made to lift a wagon or carriage so one person could change a wheel or make quick repairs. The curved handle drives a stair-step rack. When the handle is raised to about 30 degrees, the rack drops into place beneath the axle. A downward stroke lifts the axle by roughly 2 inches, and the jack's self-locking geometry holds the load without anyone leaning on the handle. The wooden body keeps the tool light while the iron teeth and arm take the strain. I found this metal piece at an antique store. It stands about 4 inches tall, weighs roughly 3/4 of a pound, and looks like brass. The base turns on an internal screw and the pedals open to reveal a small platform. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a cast brass lotus incense burner from the late 19th century. Turning the base raises and spreads the petals, revealing a small cup that holds an incense cone or a scented pastille. The petals shield the ember and let the fragrance drift through the gaps, while ash settles inside the body. The lotus motif was popular in Victorian decorative arts and in export wares from India and China, which is why pieces like this show up in American antique shops. At about 4 inches tall and roughly 3/4 of a pound, the size and weight match brass table burners from that era. I received this stainless steel tool as a gift. The tip has an angled hook. Does anyone know what it is? What you received is a stainless steel spaghetti portioning and serving tool. The 2 round openings measure dry spaghetti. The small ring marks roughly 1 serving, the larger ring about 2. A bundle of uncooked pasta goes through the chosen ring, before cooking to set the amount. The long tapered body serves as a stirrer, and the angled hook at the tip can nudge a lid to vent steam or catch a pasta basket or strainer. Tools like this appeared in home kitchen catalogs by the mid-20th century and remain a simple way to portion pasta without a scale. I bought this brass piece at a thrift store because I like nautical themes. A side lever flips open the covers and reveals 2 lenses inside. I'm guessing it might be some kind of measuring device. Does anyone know what it is and how it was used? What you bought is a modern decorative replica of folding binoculars sold with the engraved name R&J Beck London, 1857. The real R&J Beck was a Victorian optical firm, but the ship motif and date on your piece are fantasy branding used on gift shop reproductions. The side lever flips open the lids to reveal small lenses with only mild magnification, so it works more like a prop than a true marine instrument. Sets like this are made of brass with an antiqued finish and a faux vintage case. I found this old mechanical device in the storage room at my parents' house. It sits on a cast iron base and has a wind-up mechanism with visible gears inside, plus a short shaft on one side and a key on top. My parents don't remember where it came from. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a 19th century spring-powered fireplace rotisserie, also called a spitjack. The key on top wins a large mainspring inside the drum. As the spring unwinds, it turns the brass gear train and drives the side shaft. That shaft linked by chain or belt to a spit in front of the hearth, keeping the roast turning at a steady pace as it browned. The cast iron base let the mechanism sit close to the fire, and the small governor inside kept the speed steady. Families use these before electric or gas ranges. I found this old bell in New York's Hudson Valley. It's about 11 inches tall and 8 to 9 inches across at the rim, and it appears to be brass. The sides show the initials VOC on 2 faces and nautical stars on the other 2. What is it, and what was it used for? What you found is a Dutch East India Company ship's bell, cast in bronze and stamped VOC. Founded in 1602, the company was the world's first multinational and the engine of the Dutch Golden Age. On board, a bell like this set the rhythm of life at sea and in distant trading posts. It called the crew to work, signaled meals, marked the watches around the clock, announced visitors alongside, and sounded the alarm in storms or fire. The VOC initials on 2 sides and nautical stars on the others match company symbolism. At about 11 inches tall with an 8 to 9 inch mouth, it has the look and weight of a working ship's bell. I found this small leather case among my grandfather's things, and inside are 4 nesting metal cups about 5 ounces each, 4 smaller cups about 1 3/4 ounces, plus a tiny spoon. The lid is stamped Blumhardt, and I'm wondering if it's for liquor tasting. What you found is a vintage travel stirrup cup set. Inside the leather case are 4 nesting beakers of about 5 ounces, and 4 smaller pony cups around 1 3/4 ounces, plus a small spoon for mixing or sugar. Hunters and travelers carried sets like this to share a quick drink in the field or at a picnic. The yellow interior is a gold wash that helps prevent a metallic taste. The Blumhardt name on the lid is the retailer's stamp. Packed together, the cups nest into a compact cylinder that slips easily into a pocket or bag. I found this stainless steel kitchen tool in my grandparents' utensil drawer. The head is a curved scraper with a small cutting edge on one side and a smiley face cut out in the center. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a stainless steel corn scraper, also called a corn stripper. Its curved head wraps around a cob about 2 inches across, and the narrow, sharpened slot slices the kernels at their base. During use, the cob is held upright on a board while the edge is drawn from tip to base in smooth passes. The round cutouts let kernels fall through and help prevent sticking. Handheld corn cutters appeared in American seed and hardware catalogs in the late 19th century, and stainless versions became common in home kitchens by the mid-20th century. Similar tools were made in the United States, Germany, and Japan for home canning and freezing. I saw this wooden piece in a rural England pub. It's about 12 inches long with 2 brass discs and a strap that looks like leather or wood used as a handle. Does anyone know what it is? What you saw is a late 19th to early 20th century double game carrier. Made of oak with 2 long slots, it was used by shooters to carry pheasants or partridge from the field. Birds were slipped by the neck through the slotted rails and hung between the bars, while the leather and oak strap let the carrier rest on the shoulder like a yoke. The round ends with brass discs are hinged covers for access openings, and the hardware kept the strap and slats secure. Outfitters commonly stamped their goods, so the J.A. Jefferson mark identifies the retailer or workshop. Found this small wooden piece at an antique store. It's a round dial numbered 0 through 9 with a little hand that moves. Does anyone know what it is? What you bought is a whist marker, a small tabletop counter for keeping score in the trick-taking card game whist. The little hand pivots to point at the numbers 0 to 9 to show how many tricks a side has won, and players move it after each round. Many sets used a pair of dials, one for units and one for tens, so a single dial like yours could be part of a set. Pieces like this were made in the late 19th and early 20th centuries in Britain and the United States, typically in wood with a bone or early plastic pointer. I bought this at a flea market a few years ago and still don't know what it's used for. Does anyone know what it is? What you bought is an Indian oil lamp known as a diya. It's a small cast brass vessel with a shallow bowl, a spout for the wick, and a pedestal foot. The animal head at the spout resembles Nandi, the sacred bull of Shiva. To use it, lay a cotton wick so one end rests at the spout. Fill the bowl with sesame oil or ghee, and light the exposed tip. Diyas are lit for home prayers and temple rituals across the Indian subcontinent, and are widely seen during Diwali, where the flame represents light over darkness and good over evil. Found this metal object while clearing out a 93-year-old World War II veteran's house. It was tucked up in the basement rafters. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a Bermuda carriage bell, a foot-operated warning bell used on horse-drawn carriages in early cars. The plunger ran through the floorboard so the driver could tap it with a toe and make the clapper strike the dome for a bright double ring. The wide dome and vertical rod on your piece match that setup. These bells were made from the late 19th into the early 20th century in East Hampton, Connecticut, by firms such as Bevan Brothers and the Gong Bell Manufacturing Company, typically in brass or steel. As automobiles adopted electric horns, carriage bells stayed popular with antique car owners as a distinctive accessory. I just moved into a house and found this plug-in device in a basement outlet. The only words on the case are Sonic Technology, and it measures about 2 inches by 2 inches. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is an ultrasonic pest repeller sold under the name Sonic Technology. Plugged into a wall outlet, it uses a small transducer to emit high-frequency sound beyond human hearing, intended to make spaces uncomfortable for mice and some insects. The red light is a simple power indicator. Studies report mixed results. Certain insects show short-term avoidance, while cockroaches and rodents may ignore the sound or get used to it. Walls, clutter, and furniture can weaken the signal. This device works best as a supplemental deterrent rather than a cure-all, sealing entry points, removing food sources, and using traps or baits where needed remain the reliable approach, which is why people tend to run these in basements and garages. I found this heavy metal object with a curved handle in a creek bed near Hillsboro, Texas, and I can't tell if it's old or just weathered. Does anyone know what it is and how old it might be? What you found is a mid-20th century circular saw attachment powered by a hand drill. The base bracket bolted to a bench, a small blade mounted on the center spindle, and the fingered handle let the user steady and feed the work. A drill chucked onto the spindle provided the power, which made this a low-cost substitute for a dedicated saw when cutting thin wood or sheet. By design and construction, it dates to the late 1940s through the 1950s, not later than the early 1960s. I found this brass piece on the ground. It looks like a necklace pendant about 1.5 inches long, with stepped jaws and some stamped markings. What do the markings mean, and why is it shaped like this? What you found is a brass linotype matrix, the mold used in hot metal typesetting machines. On a linotype, pressing a key released the matching matrix from the magazine, and molten type metal was cast against its face to form a slug, one full line of type. The stepped edges and side notches are part of the machine's sorting and distribution system, and the stamped numbers show the type size and series. These matrices were used from the late 1880s through the mid-20th century in newspaper and bookwork. When the technology was retired, printers turned spare matrices into jewelry and key fobs. I recently came across this large U-shaped measuring tool with a German dial indicator on one end and a spring-loaded reset lever on top. It has a long metal frame, a plunger that comes down from the gauge, and another contact point on the opposite arm, and the whole thing is about 14 inches long. Does anyone know what this device is for? What you have found is a precision thickness caliper with a table rest, designed to quickly check the thickness of flat materials during production. The frame sits on the bench, the workpiece is slid under the anvil at the far end, and the lever lifts the feeler so you can position it. When you release the lever, the probe drops onto the material and the dial indicator shows its thickness to 1/10 of a millimeter. Tools like this are widely used in factories that handle sheet metal, plastics, paper, and similar products. My brother-in-law found this heavy green machine labeled Hans Schilling Maschinenfabrik Osterode Hards, with a large horizontal handle on top and a flat table marked with a grid underneath the cutting area. Does anyone know what this machine is used for? What your brother-in-law has found is a hand-operated fly press made by Hans Schilling Maschinenfabrik in Osterode in the Harz region of Germany. The big horizontal bar with the two balls works as a weighted handle that spins the screw, so the upper platen comes down with steady pressure. Judging by the ruled table and side guide, this example was set up as a bookbinder's or printer's press for pressing or trimming stacks of paper, book blocks, and covers, especially in small shops in the 1960s. I was walking along the beach near a lighthouse in Asturias in northern Spain when I noticed this huge concrete structure with a vertical row of metal horns mounted along one side. Does anyone know what this structure is? What you have seen is an old foghorn installation, a loud signaling device that once worked together with the lighthouse to warn ships when visibility was poor. A foghorn like this produced powerful low-frequency blasts that carried a long distance across the water and told captains they were approaching land or dangerous rocks. Depending on the design, the sound could be a steady tone or repeated bursts that followed a fixed rhythm, or even a simple Morse code pattern. I picked up this heavy metal container at an auction and I cannot figure out what it does. It is a blue steel drum about 11 inches across with two handles, a split metal lid, and a fitting on the side that looks like it could be for water. Inside, the bottom and lower walls are lined with ceramic beads and plates, and there is a shaft in the center as if some part used to bolt onto it. What you have picked up is the tank from an attrider mill, which is a type of stirred ball mill used for grinding and mixing materials into a very fine slurry. The ceramic beads lining the bottom and lower walls act as the grinding media, and a vertical shaft with arms once came down through the slot in the split lid to stir them. As the beads moved, they crushed and mixed whatever material was inside, while the water jacket around the tank helped carry away heat during long runs. This kind of mill was developed in 1945 by chemist Andrew Sigvary, who went on to found Union Process in Akron, Ohio in 1946 to produce attrider mills for industry. Starting in the late 1940s, they were used in factories that made paints and inks, in ceramics plants, and in the production of metal powders and magnetic ferrets wherever precise fine grinding was needed. I found this small metal ball in a closet at my office. It sits in an IBM-branded box, has raised letters and symbols all over its surface, and the plastic top is marked Prestige Elite 72. The underside is hollow with a fitting that looks like it clips onto a machine of some kind. I am guessing it might be part of an old office device. What you have found is a type ball from an IBM Selectric 2 typewriter, specifically the Courier 10 font element. Earlier mechanical typewriters used a forest of levers, with each key driving its own type bar to strike the ribbon. On the Selectric, all the characters sit on this single rotating and tilting sphere. When a key is pressed, the mechanism instantly twists and tips the ball so the chosen character moves into position, then snaps it against an inked ribbon to print the mark on the paper. The original IBM Selectric appeared in 1961 and quickly became standard equipment in offices, government agencies, and newspaper newsrooms across the United States and Western Europe. Secretaries, legal typists, journalists, and technical writers relied on Selectrics for everyday correspondence, contracts, and reports, and some models were even hooked up to early computers as terminals. I have a friend who has kept this mysterious metal device on his desk for years, and we still have no idea what it does. When I turn the crank, it raises the shallow pan about half an inch, then lets it drop again, and the crank only turns in one direction, so that seems to be its entire function. What you found is a Casa Grande cup, a classic device from geotechnical engineering used to measure the liquid limit of soil. A small sample of clay or silt is placed in the metal cup, and a narrow groove is cut through the center. When the crank is turned, the mechanism lifts the cup and lets it drop again and again onto a hard rubber base. With each drop, the groove in the soil closes a little more. The liquid limit is the moisture content at which the groove closes after a standard number of blows. The method was developed in the early 20th century by Austrian-American engineer Arthur Casagrande, who refined the earlier consistency limits introduced by Swedish scientist Albert Atterberg. This simple-looking device helps engineers decide whether a soil is safe for building and how it will behave when it becomes wet. I found this heavy suitcase-style cabinet filled with old electrical controls inside a black case, with coils, switches, and a milliamp gauge on the front panel. Does anyone know what this machine was originally used for? What you have found is an early diathermy therapy machine, a portable electrotherapy unit designed to heat tissue deep beneath the skin. Inside this suitcase cabinet are high-frequency coils, tuning controls, and a milliamp meter that let the operator adjust the strength of the current. In the first half of the 20th century, devices like this were used in doctors' offices and physiotherapy clinics to relax muscles and joints, reduce swelling, and improve circulation. Diathermy became a popular modern treatment before antibiotics, and more advanced medical imaging changed the way many of these conditions were managed. I found this clear glass object while cleaning out my grandmother's things, and I'm trying to figure out what it is. It is shaped like a large teardrop, partly filled with cloudy liquid. It weighs around 3 pounds or a little less. Does anyone know what this is used for? What you have found is a glass grenade-style fire extinguisher, sometimes called a firebomb. These were made in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, roughly from the 1870s through about 1910. The pear-shaped glass bulb was filled with a fire-suppressing liquid and kept in a simple wire or metal bracket on the wall. In case of a fire, anyone in the house could grab it and throw it into the flames. The breaking glass spread the liquid over the burning area to knock the fire down long enough for people to escape or put it out. I found this large metal triangle hanging on the wall in a house in Pennsylvania. It is about 3 feet long and made from round metal tubing, welded into a triangular shape with a short brace on one side. And I am trying to figure out what kind of old tool or implement it is. What you have found is an old Dutch window sprayer called a raamspuit, used for washing high windows. The long tube was lowered into a bucket of water, and the person on the ground worked the wooden handle as a pump. Each stroke forced a jet of water out of the perforated end, spraying it up onto the glass. Before pressure washers and long hose nozzles, tools like this were a practical way for homeowners and caretakers to clean upper-story windows on narrow European streets. I found this large stationary hand tool that is about 18 to 20 inches long, with a wooden handle, and an adjustable metal head. Does anyone know what this tool was used for? What you have found is a bench-mounted metal bender used for forming small bars or rods into precise angles. The body would be bolted to a workbench, and the metal piece placed between the round jaws at the top. When you swing the wooden handle, the jaws open and then close to pull the metal around a fixed point, while the center bolt sets the final depth of the bend. Tools like this were common in small workshops, garages, and farm sheds through the first half of the 20th century. I found this unusual wooden object on the side of the road, and I am trying to figure out what it is. It has a long handle with a lightweight spiked ball at the end. The whole thing is about 15 inches long, and the ball is around 6 inches across. Does anyone know what this object is used for? What you have found is a ceremonial mace modeled on the traditional bulava used by Ukrainian Cossacks. The bulava first appeared as a weapon in the 13th century, and by the 16th to 18th centuries it had evolved into a symbol of authority. Cossack officers would present the bulava to the elected hetman, who served as both the military commander and the head of the Cossack state. In modern Ukraine, the bulava still represents state power, and serves as the ceremonial mace of the president, made of gilded silver and set with 64 emeralds and garnets. I came across these wooden cabinets that look like something from a museum or archive. They are arranged in the long rows. Each door has a brass handle and a label. What you have seen is a set of apothecary cabinets that were traditionally used in pharmacies to store and organize medicinal ingredients. Each small compartment held a specific component so that pharmacists could measure precise amounts as they prepared medicines by hand, long before pre-packaged drugs became common. These cabinets kept a busy pharmacy tidy and made the right ingredient easy to find. The cabinets in the photo belong to the History of Pharmacy Museum at the University of Arizona College of Pharmacy. The museum displays artifacts from the 1800s through the 1950s, and cabinets like these are now prized antiques. I found this metal hand tool in a skip, and at first glance it looks like a screwdriver. The round head has a small centerpiece that slides up and down on a spring, and there are pawl-like parts on the sides, yet nothing on it actually turns. I am starting to think it might be part of a larger broken tool. Does anyone know what this tool was made for? What you have found is a tension spring pump, a specialized tool electricians use to push a pulling spring through electrical conduit. The round head contains a mechanism that grips the spring, and each squeeze of the handle drives it farther into the pipe with more force than you could apply by hand. In electrical installations, the conduit is installed first, and the wires are pulled in afterward with a steel tension spring. Using a tension spring pump reduces that friction problem and makes pulling the wires through ribbed or flexible conduit much easier. I found this metal tapered tool with a wooden cross handle among some old family tools. The metal is stamped James Swan Company Extra USA. My family comes from a town known for being one of the first places to strike crude oil, and many relatives worked on oil derricks and pumps, so I am wondering if it might be related to that kind of work. What you have found is a bung auger, a specialized tool used to bore holes in wooden barrels so a bung can be driven in. The mark James Swan Company Extra USA points to the James Swan Company, an American toolmaker founded in 1877. Its founder, James Swan, emigrated from Scotland to the United States in 1854 and later built a reputation in Seymour, Connecticut for high-quality edge tools, including augers, chisels, and gouges. In the cooperative trade, a bung auger like this was used to make a clean, tapered opening so the bung would seal barrels of oil, wine, or whiskey without leaking. I have a small antique tool that has been passed down in my family for years, and I cannot figure out what it was used for. The base has holes that look like it was meant to be screwed down to a surface, so it seems like it was fixed in one place while someone worked with it. Does anyone know what this tool was used for? What you have in your family is a hand crank bench grinder, a small sharpening tool that was bolted to the edge of a workbench. Turning the wooden handle drives the gears on the back and spins the grinding wheel at a higher speed. A worker would hold the edge of a knife, chisel, or garden tool against the stone to bring back a sharp cutting edge. Tools like this were common in home workshops and barns. before compact electric grinders became widespread. I recently came across this heavy stainless steel container that weighs around 30 pounds and has a sealing lid with large black knobs on top. There is a short pipe connection on the side with a clamp fitting. Does anyone know what this item is used for? What you have found is a stainless steel mixing vessel from an industrial high-shear granulator mixer. In the complete machine, this bowl locks into a larger housing. The lid is sealed, and an internal impeller and chopper drive powders and liquids at very high speed. The process breaks up lumps and turns the damp mass into uniform granules that can then be dried and pressed into tablets or capsules. Equipment of this type has been used in pharmaceutical, chemical, and food production since the late 20th century. I bought this carved wooden statue at an antique store, and they told me it is more than 100 years old, but they could not give me any details about it. Does anyone know what this statue is? What you have bought is a carved figure of Shouxing, the old man of the South Pole, the Taoist star of longevity. In Chinese tradition, he is the deified form of the star Canopus, and a powerful symbol of long life and happiness. He is shown as an elderly man with a high forehead, long beard, staff and peaches, the fruit of immortality surrounded by children. Statues like this were displayed in homes to invite health, blessings, and long lives. I have had this thing for years and never thrown it away because I always wanted to know what it was for, and I finally decided to ask, does anyone know what this is used for? What you have is a needle threader, a small tool that helps guide thread through the tiny eye of a sewing needle. The thin wire loop is pushed through the needle eye, then you pass the thread through the loop and pull the handle back, which draws the thread neatly into place. Simple metal threaders like this, with a small decorative head stamped into the handle, have been tucked into home sewing kits for generations. I found this large clear glass vessel lying in a stainless steel sink in an outbuilding on an old farm. It is shaped like a horizontal cylinder with several short necks and threaded openings for hoses or pipes. Does anyone know what this item is? What you found is a receiving jar from a pipeline milking machine. In a dairy parlor, this heavy glass vessel sits between the milking units and the bulk storage tank. Milk from the cows flows through hoses into the jar, where the farmer can see the quantity and check for foam, clots, or contamination. From there, a pump sends the milk onto the main tank for cooling and storage. Receiving jars like this were standard equipment on many farms in the mid-20th century. I received this small wooden item as a gift. It looks a bit like a shallow bowl with a pointed end and a leather loop. Does anyone know what this could be? What you've received is a kuksa, a traditional Sami wooden mug carved from a burl on a tree trunk. Makers usually use birch burls because the twisted grain makes the cup strong and resistant to cracking. After carving, the kuksa is boiled in linseed oil so it becomes durable and water-resistant, yet still light in the hand. Before first use, people in the Nordic region pour strong coffee into the cup and let it sit, then rub the inside with the grounds to give it a dark, glossy finish. To keep a kuksa in good shape, it is best to rinse it with plain water and avoid dish soap or strong alcohol. I found this large wooden object in the attic of an old house. It is shaped like a tall cone with a handle sticking out of the side, another handle on top, and a metal band around the base. Does anyone know what this object is and what its purpose was? What you found is an antique oak battering ram used by firefighters and sometimes by police in the late 1800s. It is essentially a heavy oak log with turned handles and iron bands, built to smash through doors in a single hit during fire rescues or raids. Before use, it would be soaked in water to add weight, slow charring in a fire, and keep the iron bands tight. Compared with kicking a door 2 or 3 times, using the battering ram was faster and safer because it reduced the risk of gunfire from inside. I found this small metal mug while going through some old silverware. The underside is stamped International Silver Company. I cannot find anything about this exact piece online, and I am curious what it was originally made for. What you have found is a small silver-plated cream pitcher from the International Silver Company, probably made in the 1960s. The 8-ounce mark on the base shows the capacity, and the sturdy shape matches the hotel and restaurant ware that International Silver produced in huge quantities. The company was based in Meriden, Connecticut, which was known as the Silver City thanks to its massive mills and worldwide export of silver-plated housewares. When decorative silver began to fall out of fashion, the firm shifted into industrial and auto parts manufacturing, but kept the old name alive. I found this metal tool while going through a box of hand tools from my late father-in-law. It's about 8 inches long, has sharp edges along the shaft. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a precision reamer, a metalworking tool designed to enlarge an existing hole by a very small amount while producing a smooth and accurate finish. The long fluted shaft with sharp edges removes only a thin layer of material, and the markings on the body show its size and taper. This tool uses a Morse taper, a system invented by Stephen Morse in New Bedford, Massachusetts in the 1860s. The Morse taper became a worldwide standard and allowed tools like this to fit securely into drill presses, lathes, and milling machines in factories and workshops across North America and Europe. I found this small metal device in a wallet-like case labeled P/51A Precision. It is marked Made in West Germany and has a textured metal plate with a strange little mechanism mounted on top. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a precision dotting tool for technical drawing from the Excello line of drafting instruments. The teardrop plate carries a mechanism with a large serrated wheel and small numbered pattern wheels that set the spacing of the dots. A pen point clamps to the bar, and when you roll the wheel along a T-square or straight edge, the point bounces to create a clean dotted line used in engineering drawings. This model appeared in the 1926 Dietzken catalog for $5.15, and sets like it were used in places such as the physics department at Kenyon College, stored in a leather-covered, velvet-lined case. I found this unusual glass object, and I'm trying to figure out what it is. It has a rounded, decorated base, a tall neck with a wooden knob on top, a chain that holds a small stopper, and a long, narrow spout that tapers to a fine point. What you have found is a Perón, a traditional Spanish wine pitcher that first appeared in Catalonia and later spread throughout Spain. Its rounded body holds the wine, and the long, narrow spout lets a thin stream be poured straight into the mouth from a distance, so several people can share the same vessel without touching it with their lips. Perons were common in homes until the middle of the 20th century and were filled with red wine, cava, or sweet Grenache. Today, they remain a cultural symbol in Spanish restaurants and wine bars, and the one you found is a decorative souvenir version from the late 1970s or early 1980s. I found this solid brass object that looks a lot like a cowbell, except there is no clapper inside, just some strange metal pieces across the open bottom, and a small pin on one side that spins freely. The piece is about 4 3/4 inches tall, 3 1/8 inches wide, and around 1 1/2 inches deep. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a vintage brass match dispenser. A stack of matches would be loaded from the side by pulling out the rolling cartridge. Once it was filled and put back in place, the matches were pushed down by their own weight and presented one by one at the opening on the bottom, ready to be pulled out with your fingers. Similar brass dispensers were used in the early and middle 20th century in hotels, bars, and on ships, where they kept wooden safety matches dry, tidy, and within easy reach near a stove, fireplace, or smoking area. I found this small leather case made in England, and the inside has a set of narrow slots that look like they were designed to hold specific items. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a vintage English men's jewelry case designed to hold cufflinks and tie clips. The long, narrow slots and round openings in the lid were made for pairs of cufflinks, while the small straps in the center kept a tie clip or collar bar in place. The deeper compartments below were used for rings or shirt studs. Cases like this were made in England in the mid-20th century by leather goods makers for businessmen who wanted to keep their dress accessories neat and protected while traveling. I found this wooden item that holds a mason jar on top and has a small sliding drawer underneath. There is a quarter-sized hole in the drawer, and when it is pushed all the way in, that hole lines up directly under the mouth of the jar. Does anyone know what this thing is used for? What you have found is a small wooden countertop dispenser, most likely meant for candies, nuts, or other small snacks stored in the mason jar on top. The jar works as a hopper, and when you slide the drawer all the way in, the quarter-sized opening sits directly under the mouth of the jar and fills by gravity. Pull the drawer back out and you get a single serving ready to pour into your hand. Simple dispensers like this were popular as home woodworking projects and as a decorative touch in country-style kitchens. I recently came across these long wooden and metal poles with different metal ends that look like tools. My mother found them bundled together at my late grandparents' house and has been trying to identify them. What you found is a set of rifle bore cleaning tools. These long rods are used with different attachments to scrub and wipe the inside of a gun barrel. 2 of them still carry the remains of wire brushes that scrape fouling from the bore, while the pieces with slotted ends are patch holders that grip a strip of cloth soaked in solvent or oil. The different brush and patch sizes match at least 3 rifle calibers, which means your grandparents kept tools for several firearms. I came across this heavy curved metal piece that my friend's dad has been using as a boat anchor. It has a cylindrical top with holes for a rope, some stamped numbers on the end, and a long wavy shaft made of solid metal. And he always thought it was some kind of part from a General Electric aerospace plant. What you found is the rotor from a progressive cavity pump, a type of industrial pump used in places such as General Electric plants. Inside the pump, this helical metal rotor turns within a rubber or metal stator and creates a series of small sealed cavities that push liquid forward in a smooth, steady flow. This design works very well with thick, abrasive, or delicate fluids that would damage or clog other pumps. Progressive cavity pumps are widely used in oil and gas work, food processing lines, and wastewater treatment plants. I recently bought a pool table, and it came with this extra game that I cannot identify. It includes a large red plastic cup and a set of 16 red numbered chips, some marked with digits and some spelled out in words. Does anyone know what this game is and how you are supposed to play it? What you bought is a Kelly pool set, also known as pea pool or pill pool. It was invented in Chicago in 1893 by Callistus Kelly Mulvaney and became very popular across the United States during the early and mid-20th century. The red cup is the shaker, and the numbered pieces are called peas. Each player secretly draws a number and tries to be the one who legally sinks the ball with that number. Kelly pool is played as a rotation game, so every shot has to start by hitting the lowest numbered ball on the table. Because it was closely linked to betting, it was banned in some places, including Montana, until 1964. I found this small brass object that is made of 2 pieces joined by a short wire. There are no letters or numbers stamped on it, only a small hook on the back of the medallion. Does anyone know what this item was used for? What you have found is an antique brass belt hook keychain dating to the mid-1800s. The decorative top plate would hook over the edge of a belt or waistband, while the hinged U-shaped loop hung below and held keys or other small items. Once the loop was closed, the key stayed secure but could be removed quickly when needed. Hardware like this was a practical, everyday accessory for men who carried multiple keys long before modern split rings and carabiners appeared. I found this metal clamp among my grandpa's tools. It attaches to a table and the end has an adjustable pronged tip. Does anyone know what this tool is? What you found is an old-style apple peeler and spiralizer, a kitchen tool that clamps to a table so the user can core, peel, and slice an apple in one motion. The pronged tip holds the apple in place while a hand crank turns the fruit against a peeling blade. Tools like this became popular in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, especially in American farm kitchens where large batches of apples were prepared for pies, cider, and preserves. I found this strange little item sitting on the bedside table at my friend's house while I was watching her dogs, and it's honestly creeping me out. Does anyone know what this is supposed to be? What you found is a plush-lined bedside eyeglasses holder, a small stand designed to keep glasses safe while you sleep. The soft interior protects the lenses from scratches, and the upright shape makes it easy to drop your glasses in without fumbling in the dark. Holders like this became popular as bedroom accessories in the late 20th century, when designers focused on small conveniences that helped people avoid knocking their glasses off a nightstand. Despite its unusual look, it is simply a practical way to keep eyewear within reach. I found this very heavy metal cabinet that belonged to my grandpa. It has many narrow drawers that slide out and hinge downward, and the units are made to stack. He used it for rock slabs, but I don't think that was its original purpose. Does anyone know what this was originally used for? What you found is a visible records filing cabinet, a storage system designed for index cards that flipped up for viewing when the drawer was opened. Each drawer originally held a metal frame that kept the cards flat when closed and lifted them into position when pulled out. Cabinets like this were known as Cardex units, named after the company that popularized the design. They were widely used in offices, hospitals, government departments, and archives where documents needed to be organized and accessed quickly. I found this handmade ceramic mug and saucer at a thrift store. The mug has a hole in the bottom that drains into the saucer, and the saucer itself has a little pour spout. It's about 6 inches tall. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a ceramic bacon cooker, a piece designed to let strips of bacon hang over the rim while they cook in the microwave or oven. As the bacon heats, the fat drips through the hole in the bottom of the mug and collects in the saucer. The small spout on the saucer makes it easy to discard the grease or save it for cooking. Potters began making handmade versions of these cookers in the late 20th century as a simple way to prepare bacon with less mess and without letting it sit in its own grease. While changing the altar decorations for Advent, I found 3 of these matching fabric pieces in a drawer. Each has an elastic loop at the top, and the sides are tacked together as if meant to cover something narrow. Does anyone know what they are? What you found is a maniple, a traditional liturgical vestment once worn by clergy in the Latin Rite of the Catholic Church, and sometimes in Anglo-Catholic and Lutheran services. It's a narrow embroidered band that hangs from the left forearm and matches the liturgical color of the other vestments used for Mass. The elastic loop on yours would have helped keep it in place over the alb. The maniple fell out of regular use after the mid-20th century, though older sets are still found in sacristies. It likely began as a practical cloth for wiping the priest's hands and face during worship. I found this plastic item in a box of advertising stationery from the 1950s or 60s. It's about 3.5 inches across, and the small red pieces sit on little hooks that can be moved from the front to the back. It appears to be from a furniture shop in Fitzroy, Melbourne. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a vintage Chopetta shopping list reminder, a small household tool made in Austria from the 1940s through the 1950s. It uses a circular plastic disc with preset household categories printed around the edge, and each category corresponds to a small hook. The red pins are moved to the front to show which items need to be purchased. The Chopetta was patented in the United Kingdom and distributed as a promotional giveaway for stores, which is why yours carries the name of a furniture shop in Fitzroy. I've noticed this small object hanging from certain streetlight poles along the highway, but not every pole has one. It has 2 oval pieces on each end and hangs just below the main light. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a Stockbridge damper, a device designed to reduce wind-induced vibrations in tall, slender structures such as streetlight poles and power lines. It consists of 2 weighted oval masses attached to a short, flexible rod that is clamped to the pole. This arrangement helps absorb and dissipate the energy created when wind makes the pole oscillate. The design was developed in the 1920s by George H. Stockbridge, an engineer with Southern California Edison, and the patent was granted in 1928. These dampers are installed only where vibration levels are high, which is why not every pole has one. I found several of these metal pieces at a military shooting range, each one shaped like an open loop with a sharp pin in the center. The range is used for everything from grenades to rifles and machine guns, yet no one there could say for sure what they belonged to. Does anyone know what this object is? What you found is a safety pin from a 120mm mortar round. This small metal piece is removed before firing to arm the fuse and make the round ready for launch. It plays a critical role because it keeps the fuse inert during storage and transport. The 120mm mortar has been used for decades as a heavy infantry weapon for indirect fire support, and many rounds use the M734 fuse, which provides several detonation settings such as proximity, near surface, impact, and delay. These pins are discarded once the round is fired, which is why several can be found on active ranges. I found this dark red glass cylinder with a metal cap and an inscription on the side. It weighs about 300 grams and looks like it might have been part of something older. Does anyone know what this object is? What you found is an antique red safe light used in darkrooms for developing black and white film and photographic paper. The deep red glass filters the light so it illuminates the workspace without exposing or damaging the film. During processing, photographers moved the exposed film or paper through chemical baths, such as developer, stop rinse and fixer, and a safe light like this allowed them to see their work without risking the image. Companies in Europe produced many versions of these in the early 20th century. I noticed this large device mounted on a railway overpass in the United Kingdom. It's about 2 feet tall, makes a loud fan-like sound, and has 2 glass lenses or windows underneath. It's positioned directly above the electric cables on the track. Does anyone know what this is? What you found is a pantograph condition monitoring system, a device used by railway operators to inspect train current collectors in real time. As trains pass underneath, the unit uses cameras and laser sensors to scan the pantograph for cracks, uneven wear, or other defects. Detecting damage early helps prevent excessive wear on the overhead wires and reduces the chance of costly or dangerous failures. Systems like this became common in the late 20th and early 21st centuries as rail networks adopted automated safety technology to reduce maintenance risks and improve reliability. I found this heavy metal object that has been sitting on a mantelpiece for years, and no one seems to know where it came from. It has a textured, segmented body and a cylindrical top with several holes. What you found is a Type 97 hand grenade, the standard fragmentation grenade used by the Imperial Japanese Army and Navy during World War II. Introduced in 1937 as an upgrade to the earlier Type 91, it had a shorter fuse delay of about 4 to 5 seconds and was meant to be thrown by hand. Its segmented metal body was designed to break apart into shrapnel, and soldiers armed it by striking the top against a hard surface to ignite the fuse. Many veterans describe the design as unreliable, and surviving examples today can still be dangerous. If this is a real grenade, it should not be handled. Old ordnance can become unstable, and local authorities should be contacted for safe disposal. I found this instrument in my garage. It sits inside a dense wooden box about 5 inches tall and 3 inches wide, with a latch that holds the lid shut. The lid is about an inch deep to make room for the gauge and buttons inside. Does anyone know what this device is? What you found is a motorized electromechanical timer, a device used before electronic circuits and transistors became common. Instead of digital components, older systems relied on small motors, relays, and mechanical switches to measure short-time intervals. This timer would have been wired into a circuit to record how long a switch stayed engaged, or to control the timing between 2 activations. Instruments like this were used in early industrial equipment, and in systems such as ignition testing or alternator calibration. The dense wooden box protected the mechanism and made it easy to transport and store. I came across this small metal part that looks like it once belonged to a larger item. It's roughly the size of a finger, made of what seems to be aluminum, and has decorative engravings on the outside. I can't figure out what it might have come from. Does anyone know what this object is? What you found is the cast metal receiver shell from a vintage cap gun, most likely from a toy rifle. The decorative engravings and lightweight alloy were typical of cap guns made from the 1950s through the 1970s, when manufacturers used zinc or aluminum castings to imitate real firearm parts. Inside, the raised posts and channels once held the spring-loaded mechanism that struck paper or plastic caps to create a popping sound. These toys were widely sold in Western-themed sets, and were popular with children who played cowboys and adventure games. I found this round object attached to the glass next to our office door. The top unscrews, it doesn't feel electronic, and no one here seems to know what it's for. Someone suggested it might be a knock sensor, but I'm not sure. What you found is a nameplate holder, a simple mechanical mount used to display the occupant's name outside an office. The 2 discs clamp together through the glass, and loosening the outer piece lets you slide a small nameplate between them. Tightening it holds the plate securely in place without adhesives or screws. Systems like this became common in modern office buildings where glass walls and partitions made traditional mounting difficult. I found these lightweight aluminum handles, and I'm not sure what they're for. There are no moving parts. The longest one is about 8 inches long, and each handle is internally threaded with a 1/4-20 thread. What you found is a set of handles and adjusters from a Tiltal-style camera tripod. On these classic tripods, the long, knurled handles screw into the pan and tilt head. One rod controls the up and down movement of the camera, and the other controls the tilt left and right, with the different lengths making it easy to tell them apart by feel. The shorter pieces with the round ends serve as small counterweights or locking knobs on the same tripod system. I found this small metal gadget with a wooden handle and a round dish about 1.5 inches across. The dish can rotate a little inside the frame, and there are 4 short legs plus 2 wire arms on top that look like they should clip onto something. What you found is a vintage tea strainer that is missing its mesh insert. Originally, a small metal strainer sat in that round cup, and when you twisted the wooden handle, the cup would swivel outward, so the strainer could be used comfortably by both left and right-handed drinkers. Because the bowl is quite small, it held only enough leaves for a single cup, and mainly smaller leaves. People either set the table with several of these strainers or emptied and refilled the same one after every cup or two. I found this strange wooden pedestal at a flea market in West Virginia. It has a spring-loaded board you control with your foot, and the top is lined with rows of nails on the sides and curved hooks at the back. Does anyone know what this device is used for? What you found is a homemade art loom, built to work in 2 different ways. In regular loom mode, the warp threads run from top to bottom, alternating between the nails on the fixed frame and the nails on the spring-mounted board. When you press the foot pedal, the board should move just enough for those 2 sets of threads to swap height, opening a shed so you can pass the weft through. With the board held level, the rows of nails around all 4 sides act as a square peg loom, where you weave by hand around the pegs to make chunky wall hangings or placemats. I found this odd device made of wood, metal, and clear plastic. It has a rusty metal plate that forms a kind of chute, a clamp on one end to fix it to a table, and a tall plastic shield along the side. Does anyone know what this tool is and what it was originally used for? What you found is a guard from an old table saw. The wooden base and clamp let it fasten to the edge of the saw table, while the angled sheet metal piece forms a hood over the blade area. The clear plastic shield blocks chips and sawdust from flying toward the operator. Early table saws were frequently sold with add-on or homemade guards like this, long before modern enclosed blade guards and dust collection systems became standard. I found this vintage wooden table in a thrift store in Washington State. There is a torn, fabric-lined well in the center of the top, and on both sides there are small round pull-out shelves with holes in the middle, and I wonder what this table was used for. What you found is a vintage smoking station. The round pull-out shelves were designed to hold glass jars for cigarettes, while the drawers stored cigars. In the center of the top, a large glass ashtray sat on the fabric pad, which protected the wood. The small holes around the circular well held metal cigar rests, and the outer holes took a long wooden handle that doubled as a pipe tapper and carrying handle. The semicircular cutouts were resting spots for canes or walking sticks. Smoking tables like this were especially popular from the 1920s through the 1940s, when a dedicated smoking corner in the living room or study was considered a sign of good hospitality. I found this metal and plastic object, about 7 inches long, outside near the electrical boxes on the side of my house. It has a black plastic channel with a metal piece inside and a wire loop on one end. I'm not sure if it fell off some utility equipment or belongs to something else. Does anyone know what this is and what it's used for? What you found is a service drop line clamp used by telephone companies to secure a landline cable where it runs from the pole to a house. The metal jaws grip the insulated wire, and the looped end hooks into a bracket or eye bolt on the building, so the cable stays under steady tension. Clamps like this have been standard hardware since the mid-20th century, when phone service spread into suburbs and every home needed a safe, reliable way to anchor its incoming line. I found this tool in my great-grandfather's old tool chest. It's about 7 inches long and has 10 metal prongs extending from one end. Does anyone know what this tool is? What you found is a vintage carbon scraper, a tool once used to maintain early gasoline engines. Mechanics use scrapers like this to clear carbon buildup and combustion deposits from cylinder heads and ports, helping engines run smoothly and avoid power loss. Before modern power tools became widespread, this simple hand tool was an essential part of routine engine maintenance throughout the early to mid-20th century. As technology progressed, carbon scrapers were eventually replaced by wire wheels, drills, and die grinders. I found this cast metal piece about 9 inches tall and quite heavy that looks like it might be a ram or some other horned animal. It has a socket on the underside and the whole surface has a blue-green patina, so it seems to be brass or bronze. Does anyone know what this item is? What you found is a finial for a whetstone mount, shaped like a leaping mountain goat, from a stand used for sharpening swords and daggers. The socket at the bottom would have fitted onto a larger frame or held the end of a stone, so the whetstone could be used comfortably at about waist height. Pieces like this are known in bronze from the ancient Near East and Mediterranean, where decorated sharpening stands were prestigious workshop tools. I cannot say whether yours is an antique or a later reproduction, but similar finials in museums and at auctions are over 3,000 years old. I found this tiny plastic bullet-shaped piece with a metal core under my mom's very old stand mixer after my sister and I had a party. It's about the size of a fingertip, with clear plastic around the outside and a metal cylinder inside. Does anyone know what this is? What you found is the top weight from the pendulum of a Kit Kat clock. On these classic cat-shaped wall clocks, the tail swings as a pendulum, and a small weight like this slides over the metal rod inside the tail to keep the motion steady. If that weight works loose and falls off, the tail stops wagging properly. Kit Kat clocks have been made since the 1930s, so small internal parts like this can easily go missing over the years. I found this multi-tool a while ago and have been using it for all sorts of small tasks, but there's one attachment I still can't figure out. I've used it to poke things and make small holes, although I'm sure that's not its real purpose. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is the Victorinox Skipper, a multi-tool designed for sailors, and the attachment you were curious about is a marlin spike with a built-in shackle opener. Its tapered shape lets it slide into tight knots and ease them apart without damaging the rope, which makes it invaluable for splicing, rigging, and other rope work at sea. The openings in the spike let you open or tighten screw-pin shackles, a familiar piece of marine hardware. Marlin spikes have been used aboard sailing vessels for centuries, and skillfully handling one has long been viewed as a sign of an experienced seafarer. I bought this wooden hanging piece at a thrift store. It has a heart-shaped cutout at the top, 3 little pairs of angled dowels, and 3 small metal screw hooks. The dowels lean outward in a way that makes it look like something specific is meant to rest behind them, while something else hangs from the hooks. Does anyone know what it is used for? What you bought is a wooden wall stand for teacups and saucers. The angled dowels are designed to hold the saucers upright, with their rims resting against the frame so they are displayed like small plates. The metal screw hooks are for hanging the matching cups by their handles underneath each saucer. Racks like this were popular in country-style kitchens from the mid to late 20th century, serving both as practical storage and as a way to show off a favorite china set. I found this small red plastic device at my workplace. It has 2 openings labeled magnetize and demagnetize, and looks like it's meant to change the magnetism of metal tools, but I'm not sure how it actually works. Does anyone know what this object is? What you found is a magnetizer and demagnetizer, a small shop tool that controls the magnetism of steel tools, such as screwdrivers and other ferrous parts. To magnetize a tool, you slide the metal shaft through the opening labeled magnetize. Inside, a strong magnet aligns the steel so it will pick up screws and tiny parts. To remove that magnetism, you pass the tool through the demagnetized slot, where the changing magnetic field disrupts that alignment. Technicians and repair workers have used tools like this for decades in electronics and precision metalwork. I found this multi-tool that I was given as a Christmas gift years ago, but it came in a plain black box with no branding, and I no longer remember who gave it to me. It's about 6 inches long and has the word Kloss on it, which I know is the name of a tractor company. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a commemorative bottle opener created by Kloss for the company's 100-year anniversary. Its unusual shape is intentional, modeled after the knotter mechanism used in Klaas boilers, a device that transformed hay and straw baling by tying each bundle tightly with twine. The stainless steel body, the movable knotter head, and the integrated opener were all crafted to mirror the look and motion of the original machinery. This special edition item became a collector's piece and received the Promotional Gift Award in 2014 for its craftsmanship and symbolic design. I found these two rusty metal balls with slits in them, hanging from the concrete wall of a barn in eastern Missouri. They sit just above the ground, about 12 inches up, and look like they were cast into the foundation when the barn was built. Does anyone know what these metal balls are? What you found is a counterweight from an old gate mechanism. In barns and farmyards, heavy wooden doors were frequently balanced with iron weights like these so they could close smoothly without someone pulling them shut every time. A chain passed through the slit in the balls and was locked with a bolt, and as the door opened, the hanging weight pulled on the chain and drew the door back closed. With modern spring closers replacing these systems, many of these old weights ended up as curiosities on barn walls. I found this unusual blade in an antique store, and its shape really caught my attention. It looks like it could be a knife or a dagger. What you found is a katar, an Indian punch dagger from the Indian subcontinent. Its H-shaped side grip lets you hold it in a clenched fist, so the blade sits above your knuckles and drives straight forward in a powerful thrust. The wide, stiff blade and raised ridge help it stay rigid for piercing heavy cloth armor or mail. Katars appeared in medieval India and became especially popular in the 16th and 17th centuries among Rajput and Mughal warriors. Some were built for combat, and others were richly decorated status pieces carried at court or used in ceremonial settings. I found this brass tool that looks like it has some kind of measuring feature built into it. The octagonal piece at the end rotates, and the other side of the tool is plain brass with no markings. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a MagnaFlux magnetic pi field indicator, also called a pi gauge, used in non-destructive testing during magnetic particle inspection. An inspector places it on a steel part while the part is being magnetized, then applies magnetic particles. With enough magnetizing current, the 8 pi slices show clear indications that reveal the direction of the magnetic field at that spot. That matters because cracks and other discontinuities show up most clearly when the field runs across them. Tools like this became standard in 20th century industrial inspection for checking welds, castings, and critical machine parts. I picked this up at a yard sale, and the seller told me it was a bad luck charm, and now I am curious what it really is. What you bought is an Asmat-style wood carving from West Papua, Indonesia, made to represent an ancestor, warrior, or spirit figure. The exaggerated limbs and intense face match the look of Asmat carving, which is tied to beliefs about ancestors in the spirit world. Traditionally, these figures were carved from local wood such as mangrove or ironwood, and were displayed during ceremonies that honored the dead and asked for protection and strength. I found this round silvery knob while helping an elderly relative sort through miscellaneous items in the mid-Atlantic region of the eastern United States. It's about 1 inch across and seems to be aluminum or stainless steel. The front has a raised Sweetwater logo and a small pat-penned mark near the rim. What you found is the pre-filter from an MSR Sweetwater camping water filter system. The small black port connects to the intake hose, and the metal screen strains out sand, silt, and other debris before the water reaches the main filter. That keeps the pump running smoothly and helps prevent clogs. In the field, the hose goes into a creek or lake, and the filtered water is pumped into a bottle for drinking or cooking. I found this iron box with a lid at a thrift store, and I cannot figure out what it was meant for. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is an Asian-style incense burner, sometimes called a censer. The lidded box holds incense with a bit of charcoal or resin, and the vented lid lets the scented smoke drift out while keeping heat and ash contained. The small guardian line on top, sometimes called a fu dog, is a common motif in Chinese and Japanese decorative metalwork and is meant to symbolize protection. Pieces like this were used on home altars and in temples, where burning incense marked respect, prayer, and purification. Without clear maker's marks, it is hard to pin down the exact age, and the heavy cast construction suggests it was made to last. I rented a cabin for the weekend and noticed this long chain bundle hanging from a wooden handle. I cannot tell if it is meant as a fireplace tool or if it is only there as decoration. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a zanjir, a ceremonial bundle of chains attached to a wooden handle. In some Shia Muslim communities, it is used during Muharram, especially on Ashura, as a mourning practice that commemorates the death of Hussein ibn Ali at Karbala. Metalworkers make them as dedicated ritual items, and some versions include blades, while others use plain chains. The practice is controversial, and many religious leaders discourage it, which is why an item like this can end up stored away or hung as a curiosity. I bought this strange framed image at a thrift store in Pasadena, California, back in 2017, near Caltech. The metal frame is about 20 inches by 20 inches and it weighs about 10 pounds, so it feels like someone took the time to present it as something important. What you bought is a composite print made from telescope images, showing a star field with two main objects captured in the 1980s or 1990s. Astronomers took long exposures while tracking a moving target such as an asteroid or comet, which keeps the target sharp while the background stars smear into faint streaks. Before digital imaging took over in the late 1990s, these large formats were typically printed on silver gelatin photographic paper. The 9-panel layout suggests multiple prints were assembled into one mosaic, the same way observatories documented observations and shared them with researchers. The heavy frame also fits the look of a lab or office display. I found this weird scissor-like tool at a street market in Italy, and I have no idea what it was meant to do. Does anyone know what it was used for? What you found is an antique ammunition cartridge crimping tool, used by hunters and reloaders to close the mouth of a cartridge, after the powder, wad, and shot or a bullet were seated. The case is placed in the head, and squeezing the handles forms a tight crimp so the load stays in place and feeds safely. Hand tools like this were popular in the late 19th and early 20th centuries when people reloaded paper shotgun shells and early metallic cartridges at home to save money and tailor loads for local game. I found this small metal tool that looks like a little container with a cavity and a flat handle. The round top slides open on a scissor-style hinge, and it swings out of the way to expose the opening. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a small fuel burner and snuffer used under a chafing dish or fondue set. The cup holds a can of gel fuel or a small alcohol burner, and the round lid swings over the opening to cut off oxygen and put the flame out. It is meant to sit in a wire frame beneath the pan. Caterers use these to keep food warm on buffet lines, and similar heaters show up in tabletop warmers at home. The design became popular as portable canned heat became common in the 20th century. I spotted this large object on a beach in New Jersey, and there were 3 of them sitting near a group of large pipes. Each one looks about the size of 2 vans. It seems hollow inside, and it looks like it might be able to float. Does anyone know what it is? What you spotted is a sand screening basket used during beach nourishment and dredging. On New Jersey projects, crews call it a basket, an elevator car-sized screen set at the end of the pipeline. When a slurry of offshore sand and seawater is pumped ashore, it flows through this cage and the mesh catches rocks, shells, trash, and other debris before the sand is spread on the beach. In some areas, screening is also meant to intercept old metal fragments, including munitions, that can turn up in offshore borrow sand. The baskets sit near the pipe outlet while the project runs, then get moved as the work advances down the shoreline. I found this small wooden box with tiny dolls inside that used to sit on my grandmother's cabinet, and I think she bought it in Japan many years ago. Does anyone know what this is? What you found is a miniature display of the 7 lucky gods, known in Japan as Shichifukujin. It is a small good luck set meant to be kept in the home, and the label on the front reflects that theme. The tradition took shape during Japan's Muromachi period and became widely popular in the Edo period, when printed art and household charms spread through everyday life. Each figure represents a different kind of blessing, including prosperity, protection, learning, and long life. These sets are typically displayed around the new year to invite good fortune for the year ahead. I found this wooden item in an antique sewing cabinet, and it seems to be a single piece with one end shaped like a handle. Does anyone know what it is? What you found is a wooden darning egg, also called a darning mushroom. a simple tool used for repairing socks and stockings. The egg-shaped end is slipped into the toe or heel so the fabric stays stretched and smooth while you weave new thread across a worn spot. The narrow groove near the handle helps the sock stay in place so it does not slide around as you work. Tools like this were common in home sewing kits in the 19th and early 20th centuries, back when people repaired knitwear instead of replacing it. I'm holding this small, dark gray metal block with an ornate raised design on one side, and it feels very dense at about 4¼ ounces. A friend got it as a thank you gift after a plumbing job, and someone once offered them 250 British pounds for it. What your friend was given is a piece of letterpress printer's type, specifically a decorative ornament block. The raised scrollwork is the printing surface, and the weight fits the lead-based type metal that printers used for centuries. In traditional print shops, blocks like this were locked into a frame alongside movable type, inked, and pressed onto paper to add borders and flourishes to stationery, book pages, and labels. Today, surviving ornament blocks are collected by printers and designers, and rare patterns can bring surprisingly high offers. I spotted this device mounted on the wall across from the bathrooms at the grocery store where I work. It has several small bubble-like domes that made me wonder if it was some kind of camera unit. And I saw the same type of device installed above the coolers and freezers in the back room after the installers mentioned Wi-Fi. Does anyone know what this thing is used for? What you saw is a Zooter, a single ceiling-mounted unit that handles 2 jobs in one device. It works as a Wi-Fi access point to improve wireless coverage in the store, and it also includes a 360-degree high-definition security camera for broad surveillance. That is why the same units show up near restrooms, over coolers, and above freezers, since those areas tend to have weaker signals and also need monitoring. Some versions can connect to store systems to analyze traffic patterns or inventory activity, depending on what the company enables. In the last video, I asked you to identify this small plastic tool. It's a keyboard key remover. I really appreciate everyone who shared their guesses in the comments. It helps the video reach more people and allows the channel to grow. Now I want to invite you to identify another unusual object. This item has a steel rod with small spiked wheels. What do you think it's used for? Leave your guesses in the comments and I'll reveal the answer in the next video. Thanks so much for watching all the way to the end. I hope you found it interesting. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like and consider subscribing. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm and lets more people discover the channel. Thanks again, and see you next time.